Hello, my name is Paul. I'm one of the digital services librarians here at the Gloucester County Library System in Mullica Hill. And today I wanted to show you how to do a simple platform game using a program called GDevelop. Now, if you've never heard of GDevelop before, I really like it. It's a very easy to use game engine that doesn't require any coding. You use kind of these scripts that you mix around. I'll show you the layout. It's really easy to get started on this. As you can see, I have up here the website, gdevelop.io is the website. And if you can try it in browser, but I'd recommend downloading it. It is a free and open source program, so have no problem just downloading it and using it however you want. They call it here a 2D, 3D game making app. For the longest time, it was 2D. They just started adding 3D to it. So I have no idea how, I think it's very simple 3D. And I don't know how to go about the 3D stuff yet. So today we're going to be looking at a 2D platformer game and just a very simple kind of style game to get you started. So I've already installed it, and I'm just going to head over here to GDevelop here. And now, one thing I will say that I don't like about the program, I think it'll start you on this Getting Started tab. So this is the layout when you start the game, or start the game engine rather, and it's got a lot of things. It's got these banners up here. It's got these guided lessons down here. You might be wondering how you start. And so actually you start by going to the Build tab over here, and then it gives you some pre-made template projects, but we just want this little tiny button over here, create a project. That's how you start a brand new game project. I wish that was the first thing you saw when you start this up, but unfortunately it's small and it's down here. So let's go ahead and click create a project. I'm going to leave the 1280 by 720. You can make a custom size if you want, but I think we'll just stick with that one for now. It gives you a basic name. We'll just stay with that. That's fine. We're storing in the computer. That's fine. I'm going to uncheck the allow players to authenticate in game and create a project, and you'll be starting off with this very blank screen. It has there's a lot of things here that will be kind of made clear as we go through here, but I will say this is what you call the scene editor. There's two main tabs here. The scene editor is this tab, and the events editor is this tab. And in the scene editor, this main part here is going to be your scene. The black rectangle here is what the game's the monitor is going to show. So you can have things going past the black rectangle, but it won't show those, at least initially. Over here we have our objects, which are pretty much everything in the game. The player, the enemies, platforms, background, everything is going to be an object in the game. So that's going to list them all here, and we're going to be adding a bunch of those soon. On the left-hand side, you have the properties panel. If we had an object selected, it would show all the properties down here. And I'm actually going to show one more. Where's the layers panel? You don't need this open all the time. But right now we have a base layer and then a background color, which right now is gray. If you want to have like a user interface, like a UI kind of layer, something that has like your scores and your life count, things that you want over top of everything else, like that's a pretty good idea to make a different layer that's going to be on top of everything else. So we might come back to the layers panel, but for now we can just hide that again. So let's get started adding some objects. We're going to need a player, a couple of monsters, platforms, a background, maybe some coins or collectibles. We'll see how that goes. But those are the things we'll need, like the very basic things. So let's add a new object. And you're given some options here. Typically, if you had your own graphics to make your game with, we would want either a sprite or a tiled sprite. A tiled sprite is something you can stretch and repeat. So like things like the ground or the background, you probably have those as tiled sprites that you can stretch out and they keep on repeating. So if we were using our own graphics, we would do a sprite or a tiled sprite. But for this, I wanted to do stuff that anyone could follow along with. So I don't expect you to have your own graphics, and I'm not supplying graphics in anything here. But what we can do, they added a really nice feature in a recent update called the Asset Store. And the Asset Store has things like, you can see they are paid stuff here, but there's also free things you can find. And so we're going to add some freely available assets, and that way you can add exactly what I'm going to add in here. So you can see they have it divided by like characters, props, backgrounds, the UI, so user interface stuff. And there's even a sound effects and music. But since I know exactly what we're going to be using, I've just kind of searched, if you search for things like, I think the one we're going to use is called Red Hero. Yeah, so he has 5 animations with him already. So it should give us a preview of what they are. So there's the idle animation. He just kind of hops up and down. The run animation, which will run faster than that when it's actually being used. We've got a jump, a fall, which is kind of similar to the jump, really. We won't use all of the ones that are here. It comes with 5. We'll probably use 3, maybe. But just add this to the screen, to the scene here. And you can see once it imports it in, that is one of our objects on the side here. And I'm actually going to rename him, I'm just going to rename him player. And objects are case sensitive, and things that we're going to be doing in the events tab, we'll need to make sure that you're using either proper uppercase or lowercase on these. So make sure you're being kind of consistent, either capital first letter or no capitals for anything. I think it's easier to just do all lowercase. So we have the player in. Let's add a new object in. Let's do a quick. We'll search for ground. You'll see there's some backgrounds here which we're also going to add in, but we want these tiled sprites. So let's get a grass tiled sprite, add that to the scene. And if we drag that into our scene, now see it's already kind of, just because of the size of it, it's already kind of tiled here. I don't want repeating top and bottom, so I'm just going to make it a little bit smaller. You can just drag these handles around. But we do want it repeating horizontally. So if we just drag this over, you can see it just keeps on repeating in a tiled sprite. So now we've got a ground going all the way from left to right of the screen. And I'm going to drag our player character in here too. And if we hit preview, you'll see absolutely nothing happens. Our character is still just staying on top of the ground, and we can't move him, we can't do anything. That's because we haven't told it what any of these things are or how to move them yet. So what we can do is double click your player, and you can see here's all the animations that we've got available. We're not going to be using ladder climbing, but that's available too, which is kind of cool. We're going to go to behaviors. Behaviors are cool. They are basically little snippets of code that people have made that give you predefined actions. Like, for instance, let's just add a behavior in here. This is a platforming character. So if we click on this, it's got default controls. So we'll be able to do, I think, spacebar to jump. And I think it's WASD to move, or at least A and D to move left and right, I think. And you can see things like gravity are set, jump speed, and you can change all of these. And we are going to change a little bit of these, I think. Gravity is probably going to be too high, but we'll mess around with these a little bit. Acceleration and deceleration of walk has max walking speed. You can change all these things. We'll just put these in right now as is. And so now if we hit preview, you'll see our player now falls right through the ground. That's because gravity is set, but we don't have anything like for him to land on. So the ground's here, but we haven't told him that that is something he can interact with. So if we go to grass and change the behaviors here, add a behavior, you can see platform. We want to make this a platform. I'm going to turn off the grabbable ledges because there's not going to be any ledges on here anyway. So now if we hit preview, you can see he lands right on the ground. If I hit space, he jumps, and okay, A and D don't move left, right. It's the arrow keys that will move him left and right. But you'll notice he doesn't he's not changing his animation states right now. He's still idle, but he is moving. So first step's done. We have a playable character, and we have some area for him to move around on. Okay, so let's go into the scene tab here, or let's go into the event tab. And right now it's empty. We're going to add a new event. And so all the events are divided into two sections. You have the condition and the action. It's essentially a cause and effect. So if something here happens, then you want to do whatever the action is. So in this case, we're going to change the animation frames for our character. And the way we're going to do that is we'll add a condition. And you can do either conditions involving your objects. So in this case, we have the player and the grass. And if I choose one of those, it'll give me conditions that are relevant to that character. There's also other conditions that you might want to check for, like if the scene just started, if you have a timer going, any kind of outside things that aren't available or linked to an object in any way, you can do that, or you can search for things too. But so for this one, we do want the player, and we're going to choose the movements here. And we want to say, is the character moving? And if they are, then we want to change the animation. And you can change the animation by name, since all the animations that we imported are actually named. So we can actually use this drop down here and say, like, run. And now we hit preview. Now he's stuck on run. And you might wonder why he's running even when we stopped, when we didn't do anything yet. And that's because, if you recall, he's actually starting up here a little bit and he dropped down to the ground. So that is considered movement. So he started his idle animation, or his running animation, and we don't have anything telling him to not use the running animation. So it's just continuing to run forever now. So we don't really want that. So we're going to change a couple of things here. Let's do a subcondition. So if it's moving, is not necessarily the same as running. So add a sub event, and you can see it's going to check underneath here. And we'll see, is the player on the floor? Because if he's on the floor, then we want him to run. So I'm actually going to drag this action down here because we want it to be running if he's on the floor and moving. So with these sub animations, or with these sub conditions rather, so it's only going to check the sub condition if this initial condition is true. So he's moving. Now it's going to say, is he on the floor? Okay, set it to run if he is. But we can also say, let's add another condition here for if the player is moving, but we'll click the invert condition. So that means, basically, if he's not moving is what we're checking for. So if he's not moving, we want to change the animation frame on here by name, and we'll go back to idle. Now, he's idle when he's not moving, and if he's moving, so you can see he still doesn't have a jump animation, but he is stopping when we stop the movement. So we're getting there. So let's add a second subcondition underneath is player moving. So we'll add another sub event here, and we'll check if the player is jumping, because if he's jumping, we want a different animation. So we'll set the animation by name to jump. So now if he's moving, he's going to run, but if he's jumping, you can see he has a different animation besides his idle animation. That's the jump animation. And then it goes back to either the moving or the idle animation, depending on if we're running when we land. So now we just need to have him change direction when we're moving in different directions. So to do that, one way we could do it is have them check We could do some events where we see which direction the character is moving, and we could flip the animation. But there's actually an easier way now. If we go over here, this is the project manager, and you can do things like change the properties, change things like variables. We might need global variables like score and things like that, or health in the future. You can add additional scenes. Right now we just have our one scene, which is essentially our level. But if you go to extensions, this is basically a way to add further behaviors than what it comes with. These are all behaviors that people have made. You can see there's authors here, and I already searched for animation. But there's a lot of things like, if you want to do like things like firing bullets, health bars, health systems, cool things like screen shake. People have made behaviors for all those things, and it makes it a lot easier to get your game up and running. So we're going to actually look for platform character animator. And we're going to add this installing project. And all this thing does is, you can see here, is change animations and horizontal flipping of a platform character automatically. So that's all this is going to do. And I think we might need to add that to our layer object in order for that to work. Let me see. Behaviors, add a behavior. Yeah, enable animation change, enable horizontal flipping. So the other animation changes, I don't think we're really going to worry about. In fact, I might turn them off. I'll see if they do anything weird when we run it, because I just want the flipping. So let's see. And there we go. Now he moves in either direction and didn't have to really do anything about that. So great. Okay, so we got a character. He has animations. He's moving. And let me check the jump height again on that. We might want a higher jump. So I'm going to go back into behaviors. And I'm going to close the platform character animator. I don't really care about that. But the platformer object, let's change. Let's lower gravity, but maybe increase the jump speed to make up for that. And see what that feels like. Maybe increase the falling speed a little bit too. So that should just make him look, yeah, he jumps a little higher. He's got a little bit of hang time there. We can always change that too. I think there's actually a setting for hang time specifically. Sustained time that might be what it is. Maximum time in seconds during the jump strengths. That is sustained if the key is held, allowing for variable jump heights. Okay, so we want to, I'll probably keep that at that. So I think this looks pretty good for now. He jumps kind of high, but that's fine. I think it feels pretty good. So now let's add a couple of platforms that we can add to our game to have something to jump on in our platformer. So let's add a new object, and in the asset store, we'll search for, I think if we just search for platform, we should find some stuff. Specifically the one I was looking for. Platform 1. These three platforms I think look really good. There's also a corner platform there. So let's do platform 1. Add that to the scene. And while I'm here, I'm going to do another platform. It's actually a wooden plank. So I think if we search for wood, find rectangle, oh, long, okay, I want this long piece of wood here. Because it has three different states. They call them animations, but there's broken, damaged, and perfect. And we're just going to use the perfect one. So add that to the scene, close, and then we'll just kind of open these up. We got to change the behaviors, call it a platform. And once again, I'm just going to say ledges can't be grabbed, and type platform is fine. But this other one, that I might rename because it's a long name. Might just call it like wood. Keep things simple. Let's change the behavior on that. And this one is going to be a platform, but it's going to be a jump through platform, which means that the other platforms, you'll just hit your head if you jump underneath of them. This one you can actually jump up to and on. And let's go back into properties for this because I don't want the broken and damaged Animations, I'm just going to delete those from our object. So now we just have the perfect condition version. And so now I'm going to drag this guy on here. I'm going to drag this one over here and just test them out real quick. So if we go underneath this one, you will see you're hitting your head, and actually you're hitting your head kind of early. We'll need to fix that because, yeah, you shouldn't be hitting your head that early. But if you go to this one, you can jump up and through it, and we'll probably want to change that. You can see you're actually going behind the object and then jumping up on top of it. We can change the order that it's showing us things. Man, it's a high jump. Maybe I put it too high. But okay, so now we can jump on this, and once again, he's kind of walking a little bit above it. So we might want to change the collision detection on these a little bit. So let's close that out, and let's look at platform. We'll double click that. And if you go to edit collision masks here, you can see that box here is the entire collision. So it's going down to where the vine hits, and we don't want that to be like where the collision starts on these. So let's use a custom collision mask. And now we can drag these corners around and kind of make it closer to where it should actually be. And I'll kind of let us go in the platform a little bit underneath. And we can even add another one if we want to add a collision here and kind of make it look like that a bit. You can either add a vertex there, or you can just, if you go anywhere along the line here and you click and drag, you'll create a new like point there. So you can have like more complicated collision detection besides just 4 points. So let's close that. That looks good. Click apply and preview. So now if we go underneath, yeah, that looks much better. And then if we jump on top of it, yeah, that looks way better. I'm still going to change the factor going behind that one box. So we can do that by going to the wood object, and I guess we have to click on the actual instance on the game itself. So you can see the Z order right here is 3. Our character's Z order, which if you just hover over, you can see the Z order is 2. So I'm going to put the Z order at -1, which means it should be, actually I'm not going to do that, I'm going to just do 1. Because if we put in a background image, it might go behind the background then, because I was going to make the background -1. So 1, we'll now put it behind our player character, I think. Yeah, so now we jump in front of it, which looks, I think, much better. And speaking of background, let's go ahead and add a background object. So let's go back to Asset Store and just type in, I think, background. And you'll see plenty of tiled options here. We're going to go with just this regular kind of hilly background here. Add that to the scene. Close, and then we're going to just drag that over. And if you click it, you'll get the little handles and just drag the entire thing. Let's see, how far does it go? That looks good. And then we're going to give this a Z order of -1. So that way it goes behind everything. And that looks way better. So I haven't done it yet, but you should probably save early and save often. Always a good idea. So let's add in a couple of enemies for us to go against. Once again, add a new object. We're going to use the asset store, not new object from scratch. Everything that I'm doing today can be found in the asset store for free. So let's search for fly, and you'll see this guy has an animated fly. That looks really good. Let's add him in for a flying. We'll have him kind of fly up and down, and then we'll have another enemy that can fly, or not fly, but he'll walk left and right on the ground. So let's add that one in, and then we'll search for, I think if we just search for monster, there he is. And he has 2 animations. We're not going to use the other one, but he does have this like cool fire animation. We're just going to use the idle and have him move left and right with the idle animation. And since he has horns, I kind of figured that he will be a character you can't jump on. So we have fly and monster, and we are going to give them a behavior that we haven't introduced yet. So let's go to Project Manager, create or search for new extension, and search for movement. And you'll see there's a lot of different types of movement you can do here. And we're going to do rectangular movement. The cool thing about rectangular movement, there are things like a timed back and forth, which would also work for having the monster go back and forth. But with the rectangular movement, you can do an entire rectangle, but if you tell it not to go in any vertical direction, then you're just going to have the back and forth. You're going to have horizontal movement. So we can use this for both types of movements, so it works really well. And so for the fly, let's double click him, go to behaviors and add a behavior, and scroll down and you'll see rectangular movement. And so the width, we're going to put that for 0. And same thing for the horizontal edge duration is going to be 0. We don't want him to go horizontally at all. And the height, I might actually make him go a little bit higher, 150 pixels, and we'll say 1.5 vertical edge duration. And we can play around with those numbers and see what they look like, but let's just see what that looks like here. We'll put him right here and see what happens. So that's pretty good. That's pretty good speed, and we can always change the amount. Like he's at 150 pixels right now. We could put it to 200, 250 if you want him to move around a bit more. But that's pretty good. Now you can see if we go over there, nothing happens. We can't hurt him. He can't hurt us. So we'll have to change that. But for now, let's just get the movements in here. So for the monster, let's change his behavior or add his behavior. We'll also do the same thing, rectangular movement, but the height is going to be 0 and vertical height will be 0. And then we'll do same thing, 150 width and then 1.5 or maybe 1. He might go a little faster then. And we'll drag him onto the ground. And let's just see how that looks. So he moves kind of fast that way. So maybe we should put him at 150 as well. Or I'm sorry, at 1.5 edge duration. I might move him over a little bit here. So the idea is that we'll have to go on the platforms over him. We can't go underneath. And you can see, because he's not a platform character, he does not have gravity. So like wherever you put him, he's going to stay in the horizontal movement. So I'm trying to make it look like he's along the ground. So you do want to kind of make sure he's actually sitting on the ground. So that looks pretty good. And that kind of traps you. You can't go underneath because you'll won't be able to jump through that platform and you'll run into him. But once again, there's no collision detection right now. Nothing actually hurts you and you can't hurt them. But let's change that now. Let's go back into our event editor. And before we continue, I should mention that there's a nice way of organizing your events when you start adding a lot of things to them. So let's go to the little circle with the plus here. We're going to add an event group. I did not mean to add it there, but let's call it player movement. And then after we tell it what it is, we can move it around because I didn't mean to actually put it in there. So we're going to you can grab the left little handle and move things around. So we're going to grab all of the events we have so far and make them sub-events of player movement. So now you can see like there's a little line that kind of shows you where everything is. So everything now is in player movement. So if we click player movement, it kind of zips them all up into there. And if we click it again, it unzips them. So that way we can kind of organize things a little bit better when things start getting, because they will get messy when you start adding some other things in here. So we can actually close that down. And then if we want to add another, we can actually right click and add an event group. You can add an event. And also when you're in here, You can add an event below, or you can add a sub-event, which is one of those, like it would go underneath this event here. So it makes it a little bit easier than if you grab the handles and drag around, it is easy to mess things up that way. So sometimes right-clicking and adding things is a better option. But for right now, we're going to add a new event. And I'm also just going to add another event group right now. Maybe I have to add the event group over here, though. This one's going to be enemies. Let's drag that in there. So this is all going to be enemy stuff. So we'll do like some collisions. So if the player collides with the monster at all, they're going to die. So we want to have the player, and there's an option for collision. And it's going to ask you, what are you checking that it's colliding with? We're going to check for this monster. So if the player is in collision with that monster. And so what we're going to do, you could delete the player, but what we're going to do is have him actually restart from his starting point. So we can change the position. So you can specify X position or Y position. We're just going to change position, which is both. And it's going to be equal to, and I'm going to leave it blank for a sec because I don't know what my X and Y are exactly. So you can see there, it needs those numbers. So it's in red because it does need those numbers. We're going to go back to the scene. And we have him starting at, you can see 119, 557. So I'm going to have him go right back to those spots. 119, whoops, 119. 557. And let's run that real quick. So now if we run into him, boom, and it takes us right back to the starting point. So essentially it's like a checkpoint. And if we wanted to have lives, we could. I'm not going to put a life system, I don't think, in here right now. But you could check to see, like, if he has no more lives, then you don't send him back. You just end the game. But yeah, that looks good there. And for the fly, I want us to be able to hurt him by jumping on him. But if we jump up underneath of him, then it should hurt us. So that one's going to take a little bit of a couple extra conditions. Let's add a new event. Oops, I didn't mean to do that. How do I want to add a sub-event? So the sub-event will be the sub-event of that group. So that's what I meant to do. Let's get rid of that guy there. Just hit delete on him. And so now we're going to do another collision detection with the player and the fly. But this time we're going to have a sub-condition. And if the player is falling, then we'll delete the monster. So we'll click monster. Oh, the fly, not the monster. Fly. Delete the object. But if the player is not falling, let's add another sub-event here. If the player is not falling, so we'll do player is falling, and then we'll invert that condition. So he's not falling. Then we will once again respawn the player. And I'm actually going to just, if you highlight, if you click a line like this, click that. And you can either right click and click copy, or you can Control C. Now if I hover over the action, you can see or paste action. So I can just paste that same action. Makes it easier to just, if you're repeating yourself. So if we're not falling and we touch the fly, then it's going to kill us. So let's test that out. It might be hard to actually, okay, so there. So if we're not falling, which means also I shouldn't be able to jump up into him either. Let's see. Yeah, okay, so I have to be falling from the jump in order to actually damage him. Boom. Now that worked, but it doesn't really, it feels a little weird when you just fall right through him like that. So we're going to add one more action after we delete the fly. This is going to be a player action, and we're going to simulate a jump key press. And we might need to, let me see if that works. It might not let me jump while we're falling. Usually it doesn't let you double jump. So let me see if that worked. It does not. Okay, so one more action. Allow jumping again. And we'll put that, we'll click and drag above the simulate double jump. So for that one instance, it'll allow us to double jump. Now if I land on the fly, boom, you get a little jump afterwards. And you can see I still can't double jump except for that instance. So that works really well. Now there's one more use we can use the rectangular movement behavior on if we want. Instead of just the monsters, we can actually use it on the platform too. So if we go to the wood here and go to behaviors, add a behavior and change that to rectangular movement, we could have it go in the entire rectangular motion. I'm just going to have it go up and down, I think. So let's change the width to 0. Basically do the same thing as the fly movement we had here. Maybe I'll change this to 2, have it go a little bit slower. And let's see, I don't know where it might start at the top of the, yeah, I don't want it to go into the ground. We'll start a little bit higher. And now we have a movable platform, which is kind of cool. That does mean since we added that behavior to this object here, every instance that we spawn, like if we put another one up here and do a preview here, like they're all going to move like that. So keep in mind if you want some that are jump through platforms that don't move and some that do, they need to be separate objects. So we can actually let's duplicate this object, wood 2, and we can make this one, we can just get rid of the behavior of the rectangular movement. Delete that behavior. And let's actually just also change the name so it's a little less confusing. Call it wood like stationary. And now if we drag this one on here, now you've got a movable one and you've got a non-movable one, but this one is still a jump through. We did keep that behavior. And another thing, if you want to have like some kind of pits or something like that to jump over, we can change that by going, we'll just change this tiled sprite here a little bit. And you can either duplicate this tiled sprite or just drag another, I guess I'll duplicate it because I already have the height. So I just did a Control-C, Control-V, so I copy-pasted. And I'm going to try and line it up as best I can and stretch it across. And if we want to line it up exact, we can just look. This one's Y value is 657. So we click this and do 657. Now it's exactly at the same height that our other one is at. And right now, if we fall through, nothing's really going to happen. I mean, like, obviously we'll lose control of the character, but he just falls like forever. You can't actually do anything with that. So let's go to our events, and I guess we can put this under player movement. Falling is moving. So let's add, let's add a sub-event. Now we're going to check if the player's Y position is a certain value. And so we want to check against the Y position, and I'm going to leave it, once again, I'm going to leave it blank, but I'm going to say it's greater than or equal to. And we'll go and check what we need to actually make that number. So you can see the value is down here. that are changing as I move my cursor around them. Hopefully my camera is not covering that up. If it is, the values in the bottom right show you the X and Y coordinates. So if we go down, you can see the Y is getting larger. And so our bottom line here is 720, which makes sense because I think our window is 1080 by 720. So the 720 is the bottom of the Y value. So we want to say if it's bigger than the Y value of our player, if he's past, let's not say 720, because then he might disappear while he's still on the screen. So let's say like 730, 735. So if we put like a 735, that way he's definitely past the screen. Oops, 735. If it's greater than or equal to 735, then once again, we're going to copy and paste this action where we're going to reset him back where he was. So now if we fall through the pit here, boom, waits till he gets all the way down there and then it respawns him. Great, so that works well. What else can we add here? So I think for our next addition to this game, I think we're going to have to move beyond the size of this one screen because it is a little limiting. So what we can do is just, we can add more of our tiled sprite there. We can add this, and you can see it's going beyond this area here, but if we preview it, and bounce off, you can see he just kind of goes right off the screen there, and he's still here, but we can't follow him anymore, so we don't want that. So we're going to add another property under the, or behavior rather. So go to extensions, and look for smooth camera. Smoothly scroll to follow an object. So yeah, we want smooth camera here. Install on the project. Close that. And then we're going to go to our behavior or player object, and I think we're going to add this behavior to the player because that's the object that we want the camera to follow. So let's add a behavior. Smooth camera. Now this is interesting. Smooth camera to follow an object. Smoothly scroll to follow a character and stabilize the camera when jumping. So I guess we want platformer camera. Otherwise, I think it's going to, the camera is going to follow him as he jumps up and down, which would get kind of sickening. Now there's a lot of options here, and I think for now we're going to leave all these as is and just see how it works. So let's preview. Now you can see the camera is following him, but it zoomed in so much that we're actually, the ground is now in the middle of the screen. And yeah, so it is following us, but maybe not quite what we want. And so we're going to be able to fix that. It's a little bit of work. It's not too much, too difficult, but we're going to add some objects to their game that the player isn't going to see, but they're going to be like boundaries for the camera, essentially. So we're going to add 4 new objects. And this time, instead of going to the asset store, we are going to add a new object from scratch. It is going to be a tiled sprite. And we're going to name them top boundary, bottom boundary, left boundary, and right boundary. So let's call this top boundary. And instead of selecting an image, we're just going to create, there's a program called Piskel that is a nice, very simple sprite editor, and it is included with GDevelop. So if we create in Piskel, it opens up a Piskel window, and we're just going to fill, using the paint bucket, we'll do like red, something we can see easily, fill the whole thing, and then save it. And then that's going to be our top boundary. And we're going to make life a little bit easier by just duplicating the top boundary a couple of times. And then we'll just rename each one. So this is going to be bottom boundary. boundary, and right boundary. And what we're going to do is, since these are tiled objects, we're going to stretch them across our entire game screen here. And these will not be visible. We're going to hide them when the game's actually being played. So don't worry about, the fact that they look ugly here. So that's the boundaries for our game. Now we're going to go into the event editor. And we're going to add a new event. And we're actually going to leave the condition blank on this one because we want this one to constantly be happening all the time. It's always going to be checking the camera against these boundaries. So our action is going to be, you're going to have to search for this one. So if we search for camera, you'll see enforce camera boundaries. And it's going to give us these positions here where we want the camera to be, or the boundaries of the camera to be. And this one, bear with me here because you have to do a little bit of weird kind of instructions here. So the left boundary, or the left bound X position is going to be the leftmost, it's like the entire width of the left boundary. That's where we want the boundary to be. So what we're going to do is, if you called yours left boundary, you can see it pops up, it suggests left boundary, but we want left boundary dot X. And then you need two parentheses there. That's the X point of the left boundary plus the width of left boundary. So once again, left boundary dot, and it's going to be width, open and parentheses. So we're going to be doing that pretty much for all three of them. So the top is going to be the top boundary. Top boundary X plus top boundary dot height, and the right bound position will be right boundary dot X, and that one's fine as is. The bottom boundary will be bottom boundary dot Y, and I think that's it. And you could leave the base layer blank. So that should work. We might have to mess around with those positions a little bit. We'll see what that looks like. And then we're going to add one more event, and the condition of this one, type in scene. So essentially, look for at the beginning of the scene. So when it loads up the scene or the level, or in our case, the entire game, when it loads up the scene, we want it to make all of the boundaries invisible. So we'll choose an action, and for the action, we'll choose the boundary. And there's, let's see, visibility, hide. And then just add an action again. We want to do that for all four boundaries, so we won't see them when we play the game. All right, so let's do a test and see what this looks like. Now already you can see it's not moving my camera in any weird place. It is keeping the boundaries of left and right, or at least left and bottom and top. So it's not going up when I go up. And let's see. And it stopped. Okay, so it stopped a little bit late, but we can just either move the boundary or we can move the, oh yeah, you can see I actually didn't move it all the way to the end there. So actually it was doing exactly what it was supposed to do. That was human error there. So, okay, so now we've got a bigger game, bigger screen, so you can put in more obstacles, whatever you want. And so now you can make your game as long as you want. You can always zoom out with the mouse wheel here. You can zoom out as far as you want. Make your game really, really long if you like. And just fill it with any kind of platforms or enemies or obstacles. I'll leave it up to you. Like I said, we're just doing the bare essentials for this example. But there is one more thing we want to do at least, and that is to have some kind of ending. And so for that, I didn't add the object that we're going to be getting to. So let's add a new object and go back to the asset store. And we're going to search for door, I think. And that should come up with, yeah, here's this cool looking door. Add that to the scene. Close, and we're going to put that door. Let's have another platform. And the door will be on the platform. And so I guess you have to go up one of these again to get up to the door. And we will go in here and so for this instance, we are going to want to mess around with layers. So I'm going to turn the layer panel back on. And we're going to go down here. My camera's probably covering that, but there's a button down here, Add Layer. And we're going to call our new layer like something like End Game or End Screen. So make sure this end screen layer is the top layer. That is important. And so let's add a new object here. We're going to add a tiled object from scratch, tiled sprite. And once again, it's going to be, we're just going to fill a solid color. So we're going to go into Piscal and just, let's do some kind of cool purple like that. Save that. That looks great, and we're going to drag that over the entire screen. And make sure that this object here, see it's on the base layer, we don't want that, we want it on the end screen layer. And I guess I should call it something, so we'll call it end screen object. Rename this as end screen. That's fine. We're going to add 3 text objects. So you have a couple of different objects, options for text. We're just going to do regular text, displays text on the screen. And you're given some options. For one thing, you can choose to name each one of your individual text objects. So I'm just going to call like text, end text 1, and 2 and 3. If you want, you can choose a font. You can add a font manually, or you can choose one from the asset store. For this, I'm probably just going to leave as is. Usually I add in a cool like arcadey or pixel font, but I didn't think to do that for this. So I'm going to change this to size to 40. We'll leave the color black, and we will say something like congratulations. And we're going to drag end text 1 onto the screen. And you can't see it. That is because it's on the wrong layer. Put it on the end screen layer. It's going to keep on doing that. It's going to keep on putting stuff on the base layer. We might want that a little bit bigger, actually. So let's go back into here. And, whoops, that's not what I wanted to go into the text. Makes it like a 60 size font. That's a little bit better. It's a boring font, but that's fine for the basis of this game. And then make 2 more texts. We'll just duplicate again. End text 3 is going to be a replay option. Text 2 will be like next stage. even though we don't have a next stage, so it won't really take you anywhere in this one. Once again, I gotta change the layer to end screen and then drag it over. So I've made what might be the ugliest end screen ever, but there you go. All right, now we're going to hide that layer entirely. So once again, my camera's probably covering that, but there's a little eye icon. If you click hide layer, and now you can't see anything on that layer. Okay, so we've got the door on here. Let's go into the event editor, and we'll add a new event. And we're going to test to see if the player collides with the door, which means he's reached the end of the level. All right, so if he's collided with the door, we're going to do a couple different things. So first off, we don't want to have the end screen be that solid color. That's just going to be like kind of like a little bit of a tint to the screen. So we're going to change the end screen object that we have here. We're going to change that opacity, which is in here somewhere. Oh, change child spread opacity. And we're going to set it to about 130, I think should be good. And we're going to add another action. And I think with this we'll have to search for a layer. Let's see. Show a layer. So we're going to show the end screen layer here. So we're changing the opacity before we actually show the layer. So you're not going to see that solid color before it's visible. And I'm going to do one more action here. And basically, I want to make it so the player can't move the player character after they hit the door. So we're going to do an action against the player. And so for this one, we want to change the behavior. Basically, we're turning the platform behavior off temporarily. So if you search for behavior, you'll see activate, deactivate behavior. And so for this one, we want to change the platformer behavior. So platformer object, I believe, is the one we want. And so you can see it changes it. It says activate the behavior, no. So it's essentially deactivating the behavior. So also we're going to do one more event check. We want to essentially have the two text objects we had, the replay and the next stage. We want to make those something that the player can interact with after they finish the level. So let's add a new event. And the condition is going to be if a layer is visible. So let's see, visibility of a layer. So I just search for layer, visibility of a layer. And we want to see if the end screen layer is visible, because that means that the player has reached the door. So if that has happened, we're going to do a couple of things. So we're going to add a sub-event to that. So if the layer is active, we'll add a sub-event to check and see if the player is clicking on one of the text objects or the other. So now I see the problem with my calling them end text 2 and 3 is the fact that I don't remember which one is which. Let me go back in real quick and just change the name of these. So let's call it end text replay so I know which one is which. End text replay. And text next. Now I'll know which ones they're actually hovering on. Okay, so back to our condition. If end text replay, we essentially want to check two things. First of all, if the mouse cursor is over the text for replay. And let's see. Here we go, mouse and touch, right at the bottom. The cursor is on the object. But we also want to make sure it's clicking on the object, not just that the cursor is on the object. So add another condition to that and search for mouse and see if the left mouse button was just released. So they've lifted up the button from clicking. And so with those two, that means that it is hovering over replay and the button was just clicked. So now we can hit action and we'll type in scene, change the scene, and our scene is just going to be the same scene. It's untitled scene. So we don't have another scene to choose right now, but they would all be listed in the drop down there if we had one. And so there you go, untitled scene. Now this exact thing, you can actually copy and paste this entire thing and just change the thing that we're hovering over to end text next. And so now it's checking if we are clicking on the next text. Now, if we had a next stage, we could change this to the scene that it would actually be going to, the next scene, the level 2. We don't, so both of these right now are going to replay the same scene. But if you have another level, you can go to that one. Now, one more thing, just to add a little bit of what they sometimes, game devs will call juice to the game here. In addition to hovering over and clicking an object, like a text box here, I want to make sure that you can see that it's clickable, that there's an interactivity to it. So we're going to actually go to the project manager and add one more extension. Search for shake, which I already did, and select shake object. Install in project. Now we go back to the scene here, and we're going to once again do the same check. Cursor is on those texts. So I'm going to just copy this and make that a new. Well, let's do a sub-event underneath the end screen. I didn't want it under sub-event under that, so let's drag it over here. Okay, so there. Now I'll paste that condition. So the cursor is on end text replay. So now add action. And so for end text replay, if we now search for shake, oh, that's why it didn't work. Okay, so we have to, we actually have to attach that behavior to the object. So go here, go to behavior, add the behavior shake. So it does need that actually attached to the things you're going to use it on. Add behavior, shake. Okay, that makes more sense. So now if we add action and choose replay, shake the object. There we go. And we're just going to leave these at default. I don't know if that's... Oh, okay, we need a couple of items in there. So I have a couple of previously made ones that I've done. So let's say the default's 0.5. I don't know why it didn't include that as the default then. Amplitude, we're going to say 0 and 0. Angle amplitude 10. And wait 0.2 seconds between shakes. And so that should work. So we're going to actually copy and paste this and just change it to the other end text next, and then just change this to end text next. And so that way it'll be the exact same instructions for that. So that was a lot of that. So let's test it out and see how it works. All right, so we should go up to the door, and hopefully, we haven't actually tested if everything else works, so hopefully this will work. Okay, so the collision box for the door is kind of big. So I got next to the door, and you can see here I no longer have control over my character. He's just staying there. Then now if I hover over replay, we get a little shake. And you can always adjust those if you want something a little more extreme. But either one of these should do the same thing. Replay. And there you go. We're back at the start. So that works perfect. I am curious, though, to go back and check the collision mask for that. I guess the bush outside of that counts as a collision. I might just change that real quick. Let's make it so you actually have to like hit the door. That was a little too much there. All right, close that, apply, and let's try that again. Because I'd like to actually, hit the door and not like the bush outside the door. So now, boom. Okay, still kind of close to it, but that's okay. And then next should do the same thing. Yeah, they're both going to replay the level. And so there you go. That's the building blocks for a very simple platformer. Like I said, I wanted to keep this very simple, so we've only got a couple of movements for enemies, a couple of different kinds of platforms. You can make the level as big as you want now and as complicated as you want. You have an end goal. But maybe we could do another video after this showing like the other things you might want to add, like some kind of overlay with like a points or a timer or lives or a health bar. We could add coins or some kind of collectibles. We could add checkpoints, which could come in handy if you make a very long level. You might want a checkpoint in there. So we will look at that in a future video, but hopefully you've enjoyed this. Once again, I'm Paul. I'm a digital services librarian at Gloucester County Library here at Mulca Hill. And thanks for watching.